3-2 pitch, grounded deep at third base. Ramirez, another great play. In to score, Pena on the wide throw, and the Astros lead 1-0. Pena speed scoring the first run of the game. So Altuve with the RBI base hit with a runner in scoring position. Now Walker flares one to right. That's going to drop in for a hit. In to score is Paredes. Altuve's being sent home. He's going to score. The throw missed both cut-up men by Nolan Jones, and the Astros score a run from first base on a single as Altuve never stopped. 3-0. Sends this one down the line in right, slicing. Jacob Melton will try and make a great catch.
He did it.
He made a phenomenal catch, landing in foul territory to save at least one, maybe two runs. Hopefully he's okay, as he had a little bit of room before he ran into that wall. What a play by Jacob Melton.
Melton selling out his entire body to pick up Colton Gordon and the Astros. What a play.
Welcome into the Bullpen, ESPN Radio 97.5 and 92.5. I am Brian McDonald, joined by Cam Smith and John Belmer. You can find us on X. I'm at Sack by BMAC. Johnny is at Third Coast Johnny, and Cam is at Clutch City Cam. That, of course, the Astros win last night over the Cleveland Guardians, thanks to Space City Home Network and the voice there of Todd Callis, who you can hear on the Killer Bees every Friday, and also former Astro Jeff Blum on the call. Of an impressive Astros win, not only because it's a road win, but because the team didn't get into Cleveland until 3 a.m., I believe it was, that day, because of the 3-hour rain delay the night before in Pittsburgh, which, if you haven't seen the video, got Astros GM Dana Brown all sorts of pissed off.
Sure did.
Because it didn't seem like the rain was ever coming down hard enough to actually warrant a 3-hour rain delay. The grounds crew and the team officials there just kept seemingly waiting and waiting for the perfect scenario to play. It's like, bro, you guys only play. This is your last game this year. There's no other opportunities to make this up. Just start the game. But impressive win by the Astros, who because of that win and because the Mariners also lost, are now 2.5 games up in the AL West. So look, we went through this obviously to a larger degree last year. They didn't get into first place until, I believe, mid-July last year. But another slow start this year. Obviously, the Yankees series. No, they lost the Giants series towards the beginning of the year this year. Yankee was the year prior, and I think there's a lot of people maybe hand-wringing. You lose Alex Bregman, you lose Kyle Tucker. You're not sure how this team's going to respond, but boom, it's June 7th. The Astros are 2.5 games up in the division.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel
they're
like
inevitable, Cam.
We have this discussion every year, and every year it's the same thing. We know the Astros are going to start off slow. We know that we're used to a big piece of the Astros previous team leaving. I think in years past,
pretty much every year.
In years past, I guess it was bigger marquee names and bigger of like the foundation of the team.
I don't know. I mean, Alex Bregman, Kyle Tucker, that's pretty damn marquee.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But every
okay.
year we're used to them leaving or somebody leaving, and then the next year we start off slow, and people are like, "Oh my God, the Astros window's over!" Like blah 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 blah. I can't believe I go to all these games and spend all these money on these tickets and flaunt about it. And then here we are again, and slow start. And who's in first place? The Astros. So that's why it's always funny. Like when we ask each other, like, "What's your concern level?" And I feel like the majority of people at this point are like, it's a 7 or 8. And it's just like, relax. It should be like a 2. Like, because
definitely in hindsight, yeah. I mean, maybe you could argue it should be even lower than a 2 in hindsight, because they're 2.5 games up. And I mean, I don't trust that the Mariners are going to figure things out, especially with their offense. We know their pitching's good, but like, I don't think as this goes on, the Astros are doing this without Yordan, right?
Yep.
They're doing this without arguably their third most talented pitcher in Spencer Arrighetti. So there's reason to believe the Astros could continue to improve. I don't see that same scenario with the Mariners. I mean, Cal Riley's, the big dumper is hitting 1 million home runs. They got a good pitching staff, but I just don't see them over the full season being capable of keeping up with the Astros, not only now, but once they get healthier with Yordan and Spencer Arrighetti returning. So, I mean, and then obviously there's a couple other pitchers who I don't think are coming back, but cross your fingers, maybe good news at some point happens with Luis Garcia and Christian Javier, although I don't expect to see them this season. But looking at where the Astros are now, I I don't know where I actually gave my concern level, but I did have a concern when they started slow that maybe this was the year where they lost too much. Like we overcame losing Keuchel and Cole, we overcame losing Springer and Correa, we overcame losing Charlie Morton. Like, and I
Yeah.
feel like I could throw more names on that list as well. But it did feel like this year, like okay, maybe this is kind of the breaking point. They're not as talented, but error on me. I'll take the L on this one. The Astros as like Thanos are clearly inevitable, and this run is nowhere near ending at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, there was, I feel like, more of a concern going into this season, but until somebody else in that division
That's
can
it,
actually
right? That's it.
consistently win and have first place the entire season, which we haven't really seen, except I guess maybe when Texas in 23. But
Even then, the Texans still are the Texans. Even then, the Astros still won the division.
yeah, and look, the Rangers are absolute trash right now. So it's just like that's why I feel like my concern level is always a little lower because nobody else in that division has been able to overtake Houston consistently. And so, yeah, we lose players, but I mean, it like I said, until somebody else shows me something else, I'm going to assume that the Astros are going to win that division.
Yeah, and Johnny and I were talking about this before the show started, and that is definitely a part of the conversation. Not something I want to dwell on because you can only control. I mean, you can't control what division you're in.
Yeah.
All you can do is try to win the games and be better than the other four teams in that grouping. But right now, if they're in the AL Central, the Astros are at 35 wins. The Tigers are at 42. So you trail them by a significant margin. Not as significant in the AL East, but you'd still trail. The Yankees have 39 wins to your 36, or to your 35, that is. So yeah, if the Astros were in the AL East or in the AL Central, they would not be in first, but they're not. So it doesn't matter. They're in the AL West, and until further notice, the Astros run this division. So let's get into some of the stars from last night. Some of the guys making the difference in that win, or that 4-2 win over the Guardians. Jeremy Pena, man, like I'm ready to put him in the All-Star game. I don't know if he'll get that recognition. It seems like all those sort of things, like awards, although he did win Gold Glove his rookie year, a lot of those awards and sort of credit for being like an All-Star seem to be a year behind for guys. Like they'll do
Yeah.
it and then they have to do it again and then they get the credit. But Pena heading into the game last night, actually, no, this is after last night, hitting 324 now with his batting average with an OPS of 876. Look, I don't think he's the biggest lock as an all-star for the Astros. I think Josh Hader and Hunter Brown are probably your two biggest locks. But I would say leaving Jeremy Pena out of the All-Star game, assuming he keeps up this caliber play. He's got a long way to go. It's June 7th. The All-Star game is a month from now. But there's no reason why he's playing a Gold Glove caliber, defensive position at the most important defensive
Yeah.
position in the game, and he's the best hitter on the team right now without Jordan.
Yeah. So and that's what we always knew he was going to come through defensively.
Yeah.
We were always wondering when is that average and that stuff right there going to start picking up. And so right now for me, the fact that he is, and this is shortstops in American League. So this is why.
Oh, you have the current ranking.
I have the
yeah,
current
hit me.
rankings, and this is why he definitely deserves to be an All-Star. He's second in average for shortstops, first in runs, first in home runs, fifth in RBIs, second in OPS, first in WAR, and second in defensive WAR.
Yeah, and to add on to your WAR thing, not only so you said he's first in WAR among AL shortstop.
Yeah.
I believe he's second in all of baseball.
Yeah,
I think I
heard
heard Jeremy say that he's second in all of baseball in WAR. I would assume behind Judge
at
or
5.
Ohtani. Okay, I would assume it'd have been one of those two guys. So, I mean, I don't know how you leave Jeremy Pena out of the conversation, but as far as being an all-star, but I think, like I said, Hader and Hunter Brown have to be in. I would put Jeremy Pena in. I think Fromber deserves to be in as well, and that's probably end of list. I mean, I think some Astros diehards would try to argue for Jake, and look, Jake's had a good season, but let's settle down. Like I like Jake; he's had a great season, but let's settle down. But I think
I would say Isak over.
Yeah,
Isak
would be. I don't think Isak will get there. He started slow, and again, the credits for doing the work usually trail a year behind you actually doing it. At least with Pena, he's got the track record of being a Gold Glove in a World Series and ALCS MVP. So I think he's got a little bit more of that than Isak does. But I think you're looking at definitely Hader and Hunter Brown. I think probably Pena and Fromber, and then wild card, maybe a fifth Astro if there is one, would be Isak.
Yeah, I think so. Because
Or maybe Brian Abreu, depending on what the
I
other
mean,
relievers look like in the American League.
Brian Abreu is definitely
I mean,
deserving of
his
making an
ERA
all-star.
is sick
Yeah.
as well. So, along with Pena, let's mention Jose Altuve, because it seems like we were. Yeah, and if you want to join in this conversation, I should mention the phone line. Give us a shout. You can text or call the HRP listener line at 713-780-3776. Talking Astros this segment, next we'll get into some NFL and Texans coming up after that. But Jose Altuve, we spent previous weeks talking about, like, okay, maybe Father Time might be catching up. He's 34, he's 35, whatever. Numbers are slowing down. Had a good start to the season, but really hit the skids there, like late April, early May, and into kind of mid to late May. But you look at Altuve, last 13 games, um, it was that 2 home run game against Tampa. So from that point,
Ah,
from that point to now, the last 13 games, Jose Altuve is hitting 360 with an OPS over 1,000, which has raised his slash line from a 238 average to 264, and OPS from 629 to 714. I'm not saying what happened a few weeks ago was a complete blip, because eventually he will slow down. I mean,
yeah.
eventually Tom Brady couldn't do it anymore, right? Eventually, guys, no matter how much of a lock of a Hall of Famer they are, no matter how great they are in their prime, eventually they do slow down, and at that age is different for everybody. But I don't think it's this year with Jose Altuve. Like these last 2 weeks, last 13 games, hitting 360 with an OPS over 1,000 in multiple home run games. I think Jose Altuve is going to be just fine the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think he's gonna be able to keep up the pace that he has at over the last 13 games,
No,
but
he's not going to hit 360.
yeah, but I feel like that pace is closer to what he is than what he started off in the beginning of the year, like really, really slow.
Agreed.
Yeah, like you said, over time, eventually, like you're gonna slow down. Triples are gonna turn into doubles are gonna turn into singles, you're gonna
Yeah.
lose some pop.
Home
But
runs would turn into balls that fly out to the warning track. Yeah.
exactly. But at least he's hitting at Minute Maid Park. And like you said, the 2 home run game, I was there, and some of those balls that those home runs, they were not short Crawford box home runs.
Oh,
I mean,
no,
some of
no.
these were
Yeah.
like deep drives, and it's just like Jesus, like to see him still do this, that's very reassuring.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's many reasons you could say it's crazy to see him do that. Now we're talking about age. Obviously, the conversation beforehand was he's 5'6" or whatever he is,
Yeah.
and he's doing things that guys at that height have never done. All right, we'll continue the Astros conversation over onto the other side of the break. Talk about Jacob Melton, what he's done since being called up, and also the performance of Colton Gordon, the Astros starting pitcher last night. Coming up in the second hour, I believe Cam and Johnny Belmer will be sitting out for this because they're not the wrestling nerd that I am. But Brad Gilmore, one half of the Hall of Fame, which you can hear Tuesdays and Wednesday nights here, along with the WWE Hall of Famer Booker T. He'll be joining us again at 1:15 to talk about Money in the Bank, which is tonight. I know you gentlemen know that. One of the biggest nights of the WWE calendar every year.
I do
That
know
is
about Money in the
tonight at
Bank.
7 o'clock. Yeah. You troll me. So Brad Gilmore will join us at 1:15. Of course, Mount Rushmore Plus One will come up at 1:30. But on the other side of the break, as promised, we'll continue talking about your Astros. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
This is the Bullpen on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Live from the Veritex Community Bank Studios. Here are the producers of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
Welcome back in ESPN Radio 97.5 and 92.5. This is the Bullpen with Brian McDonald, Cam Smith, and Johnny Belmer. If you want to join in the conversation, give us a call or a text on the HRP listener line, 713-780-3776. So before we get into exactly what I teased from the Astros, I just saw this pop up on Twitter as I was sending out a tweet to promote the rest of the show. Someone put up a side-by-side stat comparison of Isaac Paredes, who we were just talking about, being a possible all-star nominee from the Astros this year, side-by-side with the guy that made $700 million this offseason, Juan Soto.
Yep.
Right now, WAR. Let's just start at the top of the list, right? WAR. Isaac Paredes, 2.0. Juan Soto, 2.0. So, I mean, look, obviously Juan Soto's a great player. This will not continue to be this low for him, but it just kind of highlights how good Isaac Paredes has been.
Technically, Isaac is now 2.1.
Oh, is it updated? Okay.
It is updated.
Okay. Yeah, I just see now. This tweet was from 23 hours ago. So,
Yeah.
okay, the update from including last night's game puts Isaac ahead of Juan Soto, is what you're telling me?
Yeah, his WAR is 2.1 now.
2.1. Wow. And, I mean, Isaac has them basically everywhere except for steals and on-base percentage. He's got more hits than Juan Soto, more homers, more RBI, better batting average, better slug, better OPS, better OPS plus. Actually, OPS plus is tied. They're both 130. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Cam Smith was the jewel. I don't say that just because you're here.
Thank you.
Cam Smith was the jewel of the trade that sent Kyle Tucker to the Cubs. But, man, great move from Dana Brown to get Isaac Paredes into that deal as well, because Cam Smith was what you did the deal for, but Isaac Paredes might be what we talk about as the biggest win of that trade, looking, 3 or 4 years from now, looking back.
Oh yeah, and I mean that was going to be a key piece, because you're going to lose Bregman, and you don't have really anybody on this team that you feel comfortable throwing in at third. Like, you're not going to put Dubon at third. I know Dubon is a utility guy, but Dubon has predominantly played outfield and second base, not really third base. You're not going to move Pena over. You're sure as hell not going to move Altuve to third base in that hot hole.
Why not? Let's move him everywhere.
Yeah, sure.
Play left field. I mean, Biggio plays center field. Why not?
And catcher. So,
yeah,
I mean,
catcher.
I guess it could be done, but no, Isaac is, I feel like he's always kind of flown under the radar as like a really good player.
Well, you're right. Like in Tampa, he showed great power. He had a 30 home run season there. But I think people knocked him because he was so pull heavy. Like, literally until this year, every single home run. I don't know if he's had an oppo this year, but I know coming into the year, he had never hit an opposite field homer. Every homer was to the pull side. And then he gets traded to Chicago last year and like fell apart. But I remember having this conversation with Joe George. It's like trying to figure out, like, why did he struggle so much in Chicago? And obviously Joe's from the area, knows that stadium pretty well. And he pointed out what should have been the obvious things, like, well, by the time the East Side got there, he got there in the part of the year where the wind starts blowing in a lot.
Yeah.
And it's specifically blowing in from left field, where Isaac tries to hit everything to left field. So I think that simple answer, I think that's why Isaac Paredes struggled so much last year.
Well, yeah, and to that
in
point,
Chicago.
To that point, I was actually I forgot what I was listening to. I don't know if it was like I know it was an interview with, I believe, the GM from Chicago, and he basically talked about the same thing, about how there's the players for Chicago. There's a lot of times that they'll have to get to the stadium early to figure out what the wind's going to do, because in certain parts of the year that
you
wind
might not be able to hit a certain direction.
That wind is psychotic. So that further, kind of validates what like Joe was saying, where, Wrigley Field is it's an anomaly. Like, it's a weird stadium to hit in. Like, obviously it's open door and stuff like that, but yeah, parts of the time of the year, it is hard to hit in that ballpark. So,
and it has extremes both ways. Like, there's some days when the wind's blowing out, all you got to do is get it up in the air and see ya. See ya.
Goodbye.
And there's other days you could hit it 600 feet, it feels like, and it not go out because the wind knocks it down.
Well, we kind of saw that with Kyle Tucker. He started on fire this year with Chicago, and he's kind of, as the months have gone by, his production has kind of dropped. So that stadium is very much like difficult to hit in. But back to Isak. I mean, he's I thought he was going to perform well here, but he's outperforming where I thought that he would be.
Would you try to re-sign him now to a long-term deal? What is your temperature on him long-term?
I mean, he's only what, 25, 26?
26.
I mean, I don't think that I mean, at this point, we need to solidify some of those pieces, especially the corner pieces. I mean, we're still kind of
Well, you're
struggling.
signed in. Yeah, you're locked into Christian Walker for this year and the next 2.
Yeah, but with Isak being 26 and seeing what he can do in Minute Maid, I don't understand why they
Where?
wouldn't. Sorry,
Damn,
Dyken.
Johnny pops
Sorry,
in.
Dyken Field, or sure.
Dyken
Park. Yeah,
Dyken State. I don't know. Dyken something. The Icebox.
yeah.
Listen to the Icebox Thursday, sometimes Fridays at 6:00 with Joe George and Jeremy Brown.
Yeah, that stadium
How'd you
in
like
downtown.
that plug there, Johnny? Did I get that in pretty naturally?
I'll say 6.5 out of 10.
6.5. All right, I'll take it. You're mostly a critic for me for comedic effects, so I'll take a 6.5. But I'm trying to get this to load. Our Wi-Fi has been terrible today, but I'm pretty sure I saw the contract projection on Isak Paredes from Spotrac the other day, and it was in the range of like $23 million a year. Which I think if that's the going rate for Isak Paredes, I'd be all in on that. Like,
Absolutely.
For comparison, the last couple years, Alex Bregman was making 30, and I do think Alex Bregman is a better player overall, especially with his range as a fielder. Like, I have no problem with the balls that Isak gets to. I have faith he's going to make the play and get it over to first base or wherever it needs to go. I don't think he gets to as many balls as Alex Bregman. Bregman's range is better. But I mean, Isak, I think he's got a better eye at the plate, which is crazy to say because that's Alex Bregman's superpower. But Isak has been great with his patience at the plate, and in the on base percentage backs it up. And he's got now. I know Bregman had a 40 home run season, but I feel like that was a different Alex Bregman.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a completely different guy that's not coming back. But I've been happy with Isak's power. So, yeah, if the number is around or lower, like I'll just put it like this: if the number is below 25 per year, lock him up.
Have to.
That's kind of my feeling on it.
4 years at $100 million, like, sign me up.
Yeah, 4 years, 100. I know he's got this year. I think they probably look to go beyond that. If I had to guess, like if I'm Dana Brown and Jim Crane, he's got this year and 2 more under team control, and he's 26. I'd probably be looking to go to age 32. So maybe buy out the remainder of his arbitration plus 3. I mean, that's just kind of thinking out loud. I mean, we'll see what the Astros do, but I think that's kind of the window you'd be looking at. But let's talk about some of these other Astros for a minute. Jacob Melton, we heard him in the highlight coming in again, thanks to Space City Home Network and Todd Callis on the call. Hasn't hit much since he's come up, and I didn't really expect him to. Like his profile as a minor league as a hitter has been kind of up or down. But man, that diving catch he made going into the right field wall there in foul territory was unbelievable. Saw this
posted top 10.
What did it make it?
It was like number 6 or 7.
It should have. I saw this posted by Jeremy Branham. The catch odds on that play was just 35% for him to make the catch, which honestly I thought it'd be even lower. And then apparently Melton on that play, his speed reached 29.1 feet per second. Dude is blazing. Like, I don't know.
That's pretty fast?
That's pretty fast. I don't know if he's going to slug. I don't know if he's going to hit for a high average, but I have great faith that, if a ball gets slowly hit in the infield, he's going to beat it out most of the time. He's going to have infield hits like we see with Altuve. And when he's in the field, he's going to make a ton of plays for you.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think the expectation is we need Jacob to come in and start slugging. I mean, he's in there to give the other guys a day off. I mean, that is basically what he is being.
Well, I think he's going to start. I don't think he's just a day off guy. Like, I think they're bringing him up, and I think especially because he's a left-handed bat, and until Jordan gets back, you're very right-handed heavy.
Yeah.
I think unless he proves he's not capable, he is going to be your everyday left fielder, or at least I think he should be. It's at least until, like, okay, let's couch it like this. Until Jordan gets back, I see no reason why Jacob Melton shouldn't be your left fielder, and Altuve would either then be at second base or DH. Now, once Jordan gets back, Jordan's your DH, and so then you have to have the conversation, Well, on days when Fromber and Hunter are pitching, we're expecting ground balls. Do we want Altuve back in left field for defensive purposes? And then Jacob Melton doesn't have anywhere to play.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's a conversation for when Jordan comes back. But until Jordan comes back, Melton should be playing every day.
And I would be fine with, obviously, sliding Altuve back, because it's been about a week since I saw this, but somebody put out a tweet, and they were talking about comparing Altuve's WAR in the outfield to second base. And in the 10 or 11 games that he actually started at second base, he had a plus WAR.
Yeah,
so
his defense has improved this year.
His defense was better at second base than we've seen the last couple of years. So I would totally be comfortable with sliding Altuve back to second base, because obviously you're not getting anything out of Rogers. So, I mean,
I know. And then he hit a home run last night. And I'm like, oh, what?
Finally,
yeah.
he got a hit.
I'm
the
so
$2 million man.
I'm so done with Rogers. Yeah, we're getting so far he's 2 home runs on the year, so $1 million per homer. so far it's
so he's done. That's 2 home runs. That's all. That's all he gives
hopefully
us.
He's done. Hopefully they just release him at some point. Not to rehash that conversation, but yeah, I mean, unless Jacob Melton really until Jordan gets back, that should be Jacob Melton's window to prove can he stay up or does he need to go back down to AAA. So I mean, I don't expect Jordan back for 3-4 weeks. So I mean, that's a pretty decent chunk. Give Melton a month, see if he can handle it. If he can, he goes back down to AAA when Jordan comes up. But we'll see how that plays out. And the other guy we need to talk about real quick, because look, I've had concerns about the depth of this rotation, especially when Spencer Arrighetti had the fluke injury of getting his thumb broken while batting practice was going on, and you lose Ronel Blanco to season-ending injury. What was the other injury I'm trying to think of? They had this. Wisniewski. They lose Wisniewski to the season-ending. Hayden Wisniewski from this area. Lose him to a season-ending injury as well. So there was some serious depth concerns there. Now the Lance returning, being as good as he did, and shout out to Lance, picking up his first win since 2022 against the Pirates tonight, out-dueling Paul Skeens.
Yeah, that was impressive.
I mean, Paul Skeens made one mistake. I mean, it was one mistake to Christian Walker, but still.
Skeens is also on Pittsburgh, so
yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah. Shout out to his future team, the LA Dodgers. There's no way he's staying in Pittsburgh long term. You know what's going to happen. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but you know what's going to happen. He ain't staying in Pittsburgh. But yeah, I've had some concerns about the depth of this rotation because it kind of felt like Hunter, Fromber, for the rest of the rotation. Thankfully, Lance has made the third spot, pretty stable at the moment, although you don't know how long that'll last. But shout out to Colton Gordon, who his first 4 starts this year gave up at least 3 runs or more. Last night, 5 innings, 1 earned run, 5 Ks. So if Colton Gordon, not that I expect him to give up 1 run or less every game, but if he can be a stable, 5 innings, 2 earned run sort of guy as your 4th behind the resurging Lance and behind Hunter and Fromber, suddenly the depth of this rotation until Arrighetti gets back doesn't really look like that much of a concern. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on Colton Gordon overall, but I mean, it was pretty. I thought he was better than the numbers he put up through the first 4 games. The stats weren't great, but I thought he looked better than that. And last night kind of seemed to pay that off.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be the first to say, I was super concerned, with the starting pitching, but I feel a little bit better about it just because of how good the bullpen has been. I guess my only concern, and this is just me being nitpicky, is when McCullers came back, I think kind of the expectation was we just need him to be good at the bottom of the rotation. We don't want to apply all this pressure. We don't want to make it seem like he has to be like that great third guy in the rotation. But here we are, injuries later, and McCullers is that third guy in the rotation. So my only concern is just please, Lance, just don't overdo it. We need you to be better.
And they are letting him to that point.
Yeah.
He was supposed to start Sunday, but they're moving him back. They're buying him some extra time.
Yeah.
So I think that's smart.
Which is smart.
Yeah.
Because if Lance goes down, then you're
need to make a trade or you're in serious trouble. Because I mean, I know I'm done with Ryan Gusto. See you later. He's not quite the Brendan Rodgers of the starting pitching staff, but I don't want to see Ryan Gusto in the starting rotation anymore if they have any other option. All right. We're going to end the Astros conversation over for now and head over to the Texans on the other side of the break when we get back on the bullpen. If you want to join in that conversation, give us a call or a text on the HRP listener line, 713-780-3776. So the question to you guys will be, the Texans offensive line needs to be top what in the NFL in order for this bet on chemistry Trey Tunzel experiment to be a success? We'll discuss that and more when the bullpen returns on the ESPN Radio 97.5 and 92.5.
This is the Bullpen on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Live from the Veritex Community Bank Studios. Here are the producers of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
Welcome back into the Bullpen, ESPN Radio 97.5 and 92.5. I am Brian McDonald, joined by Cam Smith and John Belmer, as always. If you want to find us on Twitter, send us a comment there. I'm at SackByBMac. Cam is at Clutch City Cam, and Johnny's at Third Coast Johnny. And you can also call or text the HRP listener line. That'll get to us as well. That number is 713-780-3776. Reminder at 1:15. Any nerds out there for wrestling like myself, Brad Gilmore from the Hall of Fame, along with Booker T, will be on the show. They're promoting their fact that they're going to have a live show at 4:00 on ESPN National, looking ahead to UFC 316. Johnny, I know that's a card you're looking forward to, so it'd be interesting to see what Brad and Booker T have to say about the UFC. So if you're interested in that, tune into this very network here at 4:00 for their preview of that card. But we're going to talk Texans right now, and again, HRP listener line 713-780-3776 if you want to call or text in. Oh, we got a little football. No, keep it going, Johnny. It gets me pumped up. Now, I do have one critique of this song. Only one. There's only one note here. Because otherwise, Clay Walker, masterpiece, right?
Just one.
Just one. In the song, it says, not we're ready to win. Not we're ready to dominate. We're ready to anything like that. It just says we're ready to play. Like, it feels a little passive.
You play to win.
Oh, thank you, Herm. But I don't know. It feels a little passive to say, yeah, we're fired up. We're all here. We're ready to play. Not we're ready to win. We're ready to kick their ass. We're ready to dominate. We're ready to
setting us up for the participation.
Play. Yeah. Was that the problem with the Chargers when they visit NRG?
Next question.
Oh.
Obviously, They were ready to play, just not ready to win.
Herbert was not ready to play in those 4 picks.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, that was an unnecessary side swipe at Cam's Chargers. All right.
It's quite okay.
Yeah, Texans.
Struggle
We're
with
going to talk
Charger
Texans here. So I had this thought because it seems like a lot of people, including obviously the Texans themselves, because frankly they have, what else are they going to say? But there seem to be a lot of people betting on the idea of, even though that the offensive line on paper looks less talented with the sending of Laramie Tunsil out to the Washington Commanders, that they're betting on this idea that, okay, maybe you're less talented, but because maybe Tunsil wasn't a team first guy, maybe he didn't have that dog in them. You also lose Shaq Mason from last year. That maybe even though this team is less talented on the offensive line, that if you get more guys who fit D'Amico's swarm mentality, more dogs, more guys who are willing to fight and scrap for every yard, which I think you could argue, despite how talented he was, Tunsil wasn't that guy, that you think the offensive line could be better than last year, which has kind of been my pushback on all these moves. Like, your offensive line sucked, and you made it less talented.
Yeah,
arguably on paper. I know you added Ursary in the second round. You made some moves with Laken Tomlinson and Ed Ingram at guard, but you look on paper less talented than you were a year ago, and that offensive line sucked. But they're betting on chemistry. My question to you: how good does the Texans' offensive line had to rank? And I think they were 30th last year. Like, Texans have to be a top what offensive line in order for us to look back after the season and go, okay, the experiment worked?
I would say top 20.
Top 20. That was where Jeremy said it when we had this conversation on the Killer
20.
Bees. And I think that's fair because now my initial answer was you got to be average, right? I think in order for this team to get where it's been, because you're relying on 2 rookies, wide receiver to make a big contribution. I don't know what you have in your tight end room. A lot of that looks kind of meh. In the running back room, Joe Mixon's 29. He's going to miss a few games at some point, and I'm not really sure the depth behind him. So because of all of that, I thought they need a little bit more. I thought they need to be at least like 16th, basically right at that cusp of top half.
Right.
If you're average to a little bit better than average, then I think this offensive line is a success, and the Texans can do everything they want to do on offense. But to your point, and this is the point that Jeremy Brandon made when we had the conversation the other day, like, you were pretty close, the Texans, that is. The Texans were pretty close to beating the Chiefs in Arrowhead with bottom 3 offensive line in the league. So I do think I'm being brought around to your point of view from where I initially stood at 16th to, like, if they get from bottom 3 to 20th, I think that might be enough to say that this offensive line has improved and get the Texans to a point where they could go further than they did the year before.
Yeah, and then, like, obviously everybody wants to have that elite O-line like Philly's had and Dallas has had in the past, but not every group.
Detroit now,
although
they just lost Ragnall, so
yeah, but it's so hard to, like, put together that perfect team. So as long as the other pieces are clicking, the O-line for me, like I said, as long as they're top 20, I think they'll be okay. And you're obviously hoping for healthier, your offensive weapons being healthier than they were last year. Obviously, that Nico Collins hit was bad. That Stephon Diggs injury was hurt. Like, all their best offensive weapons, essentially besides CJ, were hurt, and you're banking on them to come back healthy. And there was also something interesting that I overheard where they're talking about how, like, last year Texans were like one of the slowest teams to, like, get to the line.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
a lot of confusion
all the time where Stroud was looking over, like, I need the play.
Yeah, like, a lot of just confusion in the huddle. And so a lot of times that can rush plays, and obviously that's going to go poor for you. So if they can get to the huddle, and like you said, with the chemistry of the O-line, they work together as like a group. Like, obviously you're going to have individual offensive linemen are better than the others, but as a totality, they work together as a group. Like that's like a little family to them.
Yeah, 5 fingers make a fist.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
So if they're all in unison in the huddle and they can get to the line and they're not scrambling, then that's obviously going to take away from some of the negative plays. And so, yeah, like, that's why I go back to just give me a top 20 O-line, and I think they'll be good.
Yeah, I think that's obviously we spent most of last year when talking about what was holding back the Texans offense, and rightfully so, talking about the offensive line. But I think that as you were talking about that, I agree with your point overall. Like, I don't know if we spent enough time on. Look, I mean, Diggs tore his ACL. What, week 7, week 8,
Yeah.
missed the rest of the year. Tank Dell got hurt in Kansas City, missed the rest of the year. Nico Collins at one point missed 5 games. Joe Mixon, I believe, missed like 4 games. So you had basically all of your offensive stars either miss half the year or miss, significant chunks during the middle of the year, to where even if the offensive line had been good, like, I don't know if the Texans offense wouldn't have still taken a step back because of the injuries. And we saw that the year before where Tank Dell with the broken leg when he's blocking inside.
Yep.
And then Nico Collins also missed a couple games that year. I believe it was with the hamstring. Maybe it wasn't a hamstring. I don't remember exactly, but he missed at least 2 games the year prior as well. So maybe that is like with adding to that a much better offensive play caller. We hope, with Nick Haley replacing Bobby Slowick, because that's the other thing I don't think we spent enough time talking about. I've seen reports from people who studied the tape that call what Bobby Slowick was doing last year with his protections like just archaic, like completely unprepared, like juvenile,
Yeah.
like amateurish. I think is what they put onto him, like just completely amateur play calling and protection. So
The league figured him out.
completely so if you get back to average with your play calling and your protections because you made a change with the offensive line with the play caller, and you maybe hopefully cross your fingers, knock on wood, get better health at wide receiver, running back, and get the offensive line to top 20, that certainly I think could add up to a jump up in the efficiency and effectiveness of the Texans offense, and maybe reverse what we saw last year of the step back from CJ Stroud.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of like the history of the NFL, you would assume with CJ's abilities that he went through his sophomore slump like a lot of really good quarterbacks do. Now he's year 3, so you're right to assume that he's going to be individually better than last year too, regardless of what the weapons around him are. So, yeah.
All right, so we're going to take a break here on the other side. Some big stuff has been happening in the NFL, especially with the quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers finally signed, finally decided he would pick a team to play football for this next season. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Anthony Richardson and his shoulder injury directly affecting the Texans, the AFC South, one of their competitors, losing who we think will probably be their starting quarterback to start the year. And then there was a really hot take about JJ McCarthy that if you haven't heard, you have to hear that and more when the bullpen returns. ESPN Radio 97.5 and 92.5.
Broadcasting live from the Veritex Community Bank Studios, it's the Bullpen on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
ESPN Radio 97.5 and 92.5. Welcome back into the Bullpen. Brian McDonald, Cam Smith, Johnny Belmer here with you until 2 o'clock. We'll have another show next week. And if we're looking ahead to next hour, make sure you keep tuned here. 1:15, Brad Gilmore, one half of the Hall of Fame, alongside Booker T, will join us at, again, 1:15 to talk about WWE Money in the Bank taking place tonight. They'll be on at 4 o'clock on these very same airways previewing UFC 316. And Brad Gilmore also has a book out on the Back to the Future movie series. So if that's something you might be interested, worth checking out. We'll talk about that with him when he joins us again, 1:15. And then 1:30, of course, Mount Rushmore +1. But big news right now in the NFL, or a couple days ago, that is, with Aaron Rodgers finally doing what we all knew he was going to do and signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, look, it's an improvement because they no longer have to start Mason Rudolph. So, okay, they improved from where they were the day before Aaron Rodgers signed. Although I'm not particularly sold that he's going to be that much better than Russell Wilson was last year. Now, obviously, Aaron Rodgers' overall career far superior to Russell Wilson.
Yes.
It'd be silly to argue the opposite. But right now in 2025, like, I know some of the numbers for Aaron Rodgers look pretty good, or at least a little bit resurgent to what we saw his last year in Green Bay. But I don't know. Like, I digging into these numbers, Cam, I'm interested to see what you think about this. Because I remember people will point to, like, oh, he threw like 28 touchdowns last year. His interception ratio is pretty good. The yards were up. Like, people kind of seem to take, even though the Jets had a losing record, that Aaron Rodgers, like, I've heard this narrative that Aaron Rodgers was better than you thought. Okay, true, but I think if you dig into that, a lot of that is, well, he got Devontae Adams in the middle of the year. Like, Aaron Rodgers has shown, like, he only trusts a few wide receivers. There's a reason why, as soon as he signed with the Jets, they brought in Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard, right?
Yep.
There's a reason why they traded for Devontae Adams in the middle of the year. He has a hard time getting on the same page with wide receivers, a hard time trusting wide receivers to do what he wants them to do on routes. So before I looked at the numbers, before Devontae Adams signed with the Jets, and then after Devontae Adams, which was week 7, that was his first game with the Jets. So before Devontae Adams got to the Jets, Aaron Rodgers was completing 61% of his passes, went up to 63%, almost 64% when Devontae Adams got there. Now, yards actually went in the favor of without. It was 228 to 231 in favor of without. So that's actually flying in the face of this. But when you look at the other two numbers, I'm going to point out his quarterback rating and his touchdown to interception ratio. I think that tells you the biggest story. Without Devontae Adams, 9-5 on his touchdown to interception ratio. So not even 2-1. With Devontae Adams, 19-6, better than 3-1.
There it is.
Massive jump. And then quarterback rating, as you would expect, follows suit. Quarterback rating without Devontae Adams, an 84. With Devontae Adams, a 94, up 10 points. So Devontae Adams is in LA.
Yep.
He's with the Rams. Now, I mean, Steelers do have DK Metcalf, a very talented wide receiver, but he's never worked with Rodgers. And they really don't have a lot else in that wide receiver room now that George Pickens is in Dallas with the Cowboys. So, look, I know Rodgers looked resurgent over the second half of the year once he got Devontae Adams, but I'm not convinced that with DK Metcalf, basically DK Metcalf alone, that Rodgers is going to be as good numbers-wise as he was last year once Devontae Adams got to New York.
Don't forget Pat Freiermuth.
Freiermuth?
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to
Yeah.
say?
Yeah,
Tight
Freiermuth.
end, Pat Freiermuth? Okay. I mean, did you know who he was talking about with the way he pronounced
I
that?
did not,
Johnny?
no.
Say that again.
Pat Freiermuth, the tight end. No. Oh well,
He is a tight end.
he's
Yes.
there.
The guy you said, I don't know if he exists. I've never heard of Pat Freiermuth, but Pat Freiermuth, yes, is the Steelers starting tight end.
Yeah, no, you make some good points because you don't know. He's never played with DK, so you don't know what their chemistry is going to be. I'm okay saying that he is definitely an upgrade over Russell Wilson, but that doesn't mean that I'm saying he's going to be top 10 quarterback. But it's Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh wins with garbage ass quarterbacks. So
That's true, but they only win enough to get to the playoffs.
True.
I mean, Mike Tomlin, I believe it's since 2008 doesn't have a playoff win.
Yeah.
Fact check me on that, but I believe he doesn't have a playoff win since 2008. And Mike Tomlin, obviously, I think someday is going to go into the Hall of Fame. He has been an elite coach. It's remarkable that he's been able to go his entire 20 plus year career without having a losing season.
Yeah, that's insane.
Completely remarkable, and worth celebrating. But
says they won a playoff game in 2017.
Okay. So that's 8 years. It's still a while. I don't remember where the 2008 thing came from, but thank you for following up on that, Johnny. But you see from Steeler fans online, like they've started to grow a little wary of, okay, we know you're going to win 10 games because the defense is going to be great, and you're going to Mike Tomlin your way into 10 wins with ball control and things like that. But not getting past that first round, not challenging. Like even when they get past that first round, they're not really challenging to be a true Super Bowl contender. I think that's fair to say. Like, I don't know if Aaron Rodgers coming in and basically repeating last year's success of, let's say, 10 wins, one and done in the playoffs. I don't know if that's enough to satisfy the Steelers fans right now.
It's almost kind of like Andy Reid in Philly. Like you knew that you were,
at least Andy Reid was getting to conference title games.
Very true. But even that consistency started to wear thin on Philly fans.
They did.
So it's kind of amazing that Tomlin has survived this long, especially with the Steelers. Because when you think of Pittsburgh, you think of that's what you think of. You think of the Steelers.
Well, you mean? I thought you were going to say coaching stability because he's only the third coach they've had. It went Chuck Noll to not Kalashaw.
Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name too.
Oh my God.
Mustache.
Cowher.
There it is. Bill Cowher. There it is.
It went from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin. And that traces back to the late 60s?
Yeah.
3 coaches?
But what I'm saying is, like, in terms of when you think of this, like, Pittsburgh sports wise, like, your instant thought is instant thought is the Steelers. So it's been pretty remarkable that he's lasted this long. I feel like every year there's especially the last couple of years, there's always a little bit of talk of like, okay, is this Mike Tomlin's like last year? Like, when are they going to finally be like?
I think he's a bit on the hot seat.
If
he goes one and done again, I look, because here's the other side of it. Like, okay, people are still going to be excited to get into the playoffs. Like that's not nothing, right? But the other side of it is like since Ben Roethlisberger hung it up, they can't get the next QB because they're still winning 10 games every year, right? They're going to have to at some point, unless they get lucky, and they didn't with Kenny Pickett, who they drafted in like the 22nd, 23rd overall. He and his baby hands, who I think his career high in touchdown passes is like 9. Like he was comically bad as a first round draft pick. But they're not going to, most likely, they're not going to get that next guy. They're not going to get their next Ben Roethlisberger unless they're bad enough to have a pick good enough to draft that guy. But if Mike Tomlin keeps piecing it together with Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers and whoever else and manufacturing their way to 10 wins, it feels like they're going to be forever trapped in this purgatory of one and done playoffs.
I was just about to.
Real quick, I just want to add one thing to that. I think that Mike Tomlin's not on the hot seat, and I think just because of how good of a coach he is. But I think instead of being in that purgatory, like you said, you win too many games, you're drafting too low or too high, or which one is it? Drafting too low, right?
Drafting too low.
Yeah. What you do is then you plan ahead, right? And you trade up into those spots. You sacrifice something there to get up into those spots. I don't think Mike Tomlin's on the hot seat. He's too good of a coach.
I don't know. I mean, what Johnny's presenting, I think, is probably the rational thought. You don't fire a coach who's been that good. But I don't know if rational thinking is always going to play itself out with NFL fans and sometimes with the people making decisions with this team, right? I mean, we've seen how many coaches over recent years get 1 year or not even make it through. Like Denver fired, what's his name that went to the Jets, the Aaron Rodgers buddy. They fired him midway into the year. Carolina recently.
Saleh?
No, not Saleh. It was the coach before Saleh. He was Saleh was the coach of the Jets. He was oh my gosh, he was the offensive coordinator in Green Bay. Went to Denver, didn't make it through the full year, and then became the Jets OC.
Fangio?
No, that's the DC. I'm talking about the
DC.
OC. Something Hackett. Doesn't matter. Anyway.
Oh, Nathaniel Hackett.
That might be his name.
So, yeah.
That might be his name. Point being, like we saw Denver recently, not even let their first year head coach get through a single year. We saw Carolina recently do the same thing, not let their coach get through a full year. Jaguars have had a one and done with Urban Meyer recently. Like rational thinking, although it was fair with Urban Meyer, he was a disaster. Rational thinking of it takes time, or this guy is winning a lot. We should not, instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, let's just tweak it a little bit. I don't know if that rational thinking always prevails in NFL circles.
Yeah, and I think more to that too is it's also like the division. Like eventually,
You're
obvi-
behind Lamar, you're behind Burrow.
like
Yeah.
you are the third team in that division, and those two other teams are essentially powerhouses. And I know this might be a stretch comparison, but it's kind of like back in the day when RC Slocum was very good at A&M, was winning a lot of games, but A&M could never overtake UT, and that was ultimately the downfall to RC. It wasn't. It
Good
was.
point.
It was pretty much nothing else. It was just the fact that A&M can never overcome UT, and so now we're getting to the point where not only is Pittsburgh, they are get it. They are consistently good, but not only are they not winning in the playoffs now, but they're falling behind Cincinnati and Baltimore. And in that division, I feel like that's a big no-no.
Yeah. No, yeah, because you have to kind of look at yourself like, okay, we're good enough to win 10 games. We're good enough to get to the playoffs. But I mean, quarterback is king, right? You don't have a better quarterback than the Ravens do with Lamar. You don't have a better quarterback than the Bengals do with Joe Burrow. You're kind of, solidly. I know the Bengals didn't make the playoffs the last couple of years, but you're in a way pretty solidified as being, as you said, the third team in that division. And really, the only way to reset that is to get a quarterback that can compete with those two.
Yeah.
And you're never going to do that if you're winning 10 games and making the playoffs. But other side of the break, we're going to go ahead and get out now. We want to talk some NBA Finals on this side, but I still have to play this hot JJ McCarthy take. We can't
Please
finish
do.
the show without getting to it. So we'll hear that on the other side of the break. Plus, we'll get our thoughts on Pacers and Thunder Game 1. That when the bullpen returns on ESPN Radio 97.5 and 92.5. Welcome into hour number 2 of the Bullpen here on ESPN Radio 97.5 and 92.5. Brian McDonald, Cam Smith, John Belmer with you for another hour until 2 o'clock. We'll be back next week as well. And looking forward to the next segment when I force these guys to hear wrestling talk, because Brad Gilmore, one half of the Hall of Fame, will join us here at 1:15. Then Mount Rushmore +1 at 1:30 before we get out. But carrying over the NFL conversation from the last segment, and if you want to join that conversation, please give us a call or a text on the HRP listener line at 713-780-3776. We have to hear, Johnny, if you have this audio ready, this hot ass take from former SportsCenter anchor, former Daily Show host, former late night show host. He's got a super hot take on what he thinks of Vikings star or presumed starter JJ McCarthy.
So this is the hot take. And this is interesting because I've thought about the top 5 quarterbacks, the guys I like. I don't know if I've thought about the top 10 or top 15, so I'm curious where this guy ranks. But my hot take is, ladies and gentlemen, JJ McCarthy will be a better pro than John Elway.
You heard it, Cam Smith, for the first time. Johnny and I have already heard this audio. Craig Kilborn, again, former SportsCenter host back in the 90s, said JJ McCarthy, a guy who's never taken a snap in the NFL, and I think Michigan had him attempt 5 passes per game on their way to a national title, will be better, have a better NFL career than a man who won multiple MVPs, 2 Super Bowls, and it went into the Hall of Fame, that being John Elway. Your reaction to that spicy, scorching hot take from Craig Kilborn?
Did he record this with Snoop Dogg? Because he must have
You
been
saying he was high?
He must have been high out of his mind.
No, I can't remember. It wasn't Snoop Dogg, obviously, but he did have other people on this stream with him, and they reacted like you would expect. Like just freak, like, are you kidding me? Like, John Elway won 2 Super Bowls. He's a however many time MVP. I don't know how many times John Elway won it. I guess at least twice. He went into the Hall of Fame. I think he's probably universally regarded as a top 10 quarterback of all time. Maybe even top 5. I don't know. That might be stretching it. I mean, I think he's probably going to be regarded behind, obviously, Brady, Montana. I would probably say Peyton Manning as well. I think the conversation kind of starts after that. But definitely within the top 10. And JJ McCarthy, who's never taken a snap in the NFL, he's trying to throw out here that this dude is going to have a better career than John Elway.
Look, I get, like, especially around the draft time, you're obviously going to, part of the drafting process is comparing the draftees to current and past players. Like, I get that's a normal thing. And even some of those are just like, what are you talking about? But to say he's going to have a better career than a Hall of Famer with, like you said, without throwing a pass in a single regular season game, I feel like sometimes people just, even in their head, they're like, this is going to be an idiotic hot take, but I'm going to say it because if it hits, I'm going to look like a genius.
Well, and I think it's also like, I want what we're doing now. I want people saying Craig Kilborn said, because that then takes people to look at his, podcast, his stream,
Does
whatever.
he owe JJ money or something? I mean,
it'd be one thing. Like, I know, obviously no rookie. If we're going by what we're talking about, how can you compare a guy who hasn't taken snaps in the NFL? Then you can never compare a rookie to an all-time great. I would make an exception for the guys who are universally regarded as generational prospects, right? Like Andrew Luck comes out, like, oh my God, Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
He's going to be the next whatever. Now, obviously, it hasn't panned out this way, but people thought the same thing of Trevor Lawrence.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that kind of makes the point, right?
Thank you.
Like, I would make an exception, even though it's still ridiculous and too soon, blah, 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 for guys of that ilk. JJ McCarthy, I know he went 10th overall. I think it was 10th overall. But I don't think he's ever been regarded as that. If Michigan thought he was that guy, they would have let him attempt more passes than he did. Now, I mean, you can make the argument, well, they had a formula. They ran the ball. They played defense. They didn't need JJ McCarthy to run or to throw it. And fair, because they won the national title. I can't argue against that. But still, like, I just don't see anything from what I've seen with JJ McCarthy playing in the last 2 years at Michigan where I thought, oh, he's got a chance to like I would have even thought it was a stretch if you're going to say he was going to be a Pro Bowler. Like I would
Yeah.
even have thought that might have been a stretch. I mean, to then take the leap from that to Hall of Famer, multiple time MVP and Super Bowl winner is just beyond.
That's why this is still kind of mind-boggling to me that this is actual audio.
Yeah, Craig Kilborn with a take for the ages. So let's quickly get in some thoughts about the NBA Finals. Game 3 can be heard here on Sunday tomorrow. Coverage starting at 6:00 here on ESPN Radio 97.5 and 92.5. But another comeback for the ages for Tyler Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers the other night in Game 1.
Jumper off the mark, won't go. Rebound, Neesmith. The Pacers with a chance to win it. Final seconds, no fouls to give. Halliburton looking. Halliburton driving, pulls up, jump shot. It's good! It's good! With 3/10 of a second remaining. Timeout, OKC. Tyrese Halliburton does it again.
Credit to the audio there for ABC of Tyrese Halliburton's game winner, who, I mean, I cannot believe this is the guy who didn't get a single vote in the new award for Clutch Player of the Year.
And this was also the guy that was voted the most overrated player in the NBA.
Now, it's funny because, like, obviously people are reacting to, like, we got to move him up the list. So I was just, like, curious, like, let me find the top 100 players list. And this one comes courtesy of the Ringer. And it looks like it was last updated on June 2nd. But it has Tyrese Halliburton 7th in all of the NBA. So, I mean, that's look, I mean, he's obviously behind guys like SGA and Jokic and Anthony Edwards, the guys you would expect. He's behind Luka as well, but he's ahead of some pretty formidable players: Jalen Brunson, Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, Wemby, LeBron. Although obviously he's 1,000 years old. AD, Jaylen Brown, Finals MVP just a year ago. What do you think of that ranking now of Tyrese Halliburton, 7th best player in the NBA? Is that fair? Or is he at 7 overrated?
That's a tricky one.
Because I think sometimes when you call someone overrated and then he overperforms, then you move him up too far. You kind of overreact the other way. Like 7th seems like I might knock him down a couple spots if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think 7. I was kind of shocked when I heard 7, but I definitely would be okay with him being in the top 10. But that still doesn't make him like overrated. Like,
well, I mean, overrated is relevant to wherever you're rated at. Like, it doesn't mean you're a bad player, but it just is you're ranked this. You really should be here. It's not really like you're bad. It's just
true. But I'm also because the overrated comments were coming out like a month and a half ago. Mm-hmm. So those comments might not accurately reflect where his ranking is now. But I mean, honestly, it would be hard to disagree with him being at 7 because not only has he had a phenomenal year, but look what he's done in the playoffs. And I don't think anybody and their mama thought the Pacers would be in the finals.
Well, yeah, or win. Like before the series, Joel, Jeremy, and I all picked our winner. I think Joel had him in 6, and then I had him. I had OK in 5. Joel had OKC in 6, and I think Jeremy either had OKC in 5 or 6. I don't remember. So I mean, let's get into that though. Like, Pacers win game 1. You now give them a chance. Like, what would you put their odds at? Like 10 being they're locked to win the series, 1 they have no chance. Where would you put them at right now? Because I still think OKC wins the series. Now I'm now willing to move that up to OKC in 6 or 7. I'm certainly off of the OKC in 5 at this point. I don't think OKC is winning the next 4 in a row. But what odds would you give the Pacers currently?
I still don't think I can pick them to win, but I definitely think that it can be at least stretched to game 7.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm leaning to now, like OKC in 7.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is one of the most incredible runs. Like, they've had this game where in each round, obviously remember the second round or first round against the Bucks, I believe it was game 5 against the Bucks. Then game 4 or game 3 against the Cavaliers, obviously game 1 against the Knicks, and then game 1 against OKC. Each time where their win odds are just astronomically small. I mean, in that game against OKC in game 1, they were down, I think it was 15 with like 4 minutes left. It was like 7 inside of a minute. and they just find ways to pull off these improbable wins to the point where, like, if I'm starting a franchise, I mean, Tyrese Halliburton would be amongst my first 10 picks. Like, this ranking, Jokic 1, Shea 2, Giannis 3, Luka 4, Steph Curry 5. I mean, Steph's getting up there. I know he's still a better player than Tyrese, but like, if I'm building a franchise, I think I'd rather have Tyrese because of the age. Anthony Edwards is 6, and then Tyrese Halliburton is 7, followed by, rounding out your top 10, Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, and Jason Tatum. I I might drop down Halliburton a few spots, maybe to 10, and move those 3 guys I mentioned, Tatum, Brunson, and I forget who the other one was now. This list isn't loading. Our Wi-Fi is terrible.
Mitchell.
Donovan Mitchell. Yeah, I might move those guys ahead of him just because, like, he's not. I know he's had some big games in the playoffs with these 30-point performances, but let's remember where he was. Like, he finished the night 6 of 13 after he hits the game-winning shot, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say, because it wasn't like this wide open crazy look, or wide open easy look for him. Let's say he misses a shot. Like, we're crediting him now because he went 6 of 13, he hits the game-winning shot. I think he finishes the game with like 15 points. He misses that. He's the guy that goes 5 for 13, not a shooting percentage you're happy with, and he scores what, like 12 points in the game.
And then we're having the conversation
like,
about, see, this is what we're talking about.
One shot turned from, oh man, Tyrese disappeared, to he's the GOAT clutch player.
Big shot.
Yeah. I mean,
Big shot Tyrese.
It's crazy, but it's true. I mean, if he finishes that game 5 of 13 for like 12 points, we're having a 180 conversation from what we're having right now.
We were having the conversation of, oh, they lost because Tyrese.
Yeah, in part. Like, there would be other things. I mean, obviously, you'd have to list turnovers because they had a crazy amount of turnovers in that game.
Yeah,
but
they did.
Certainly Tyrese would be one of the dogs that you mentioned as far as what prevented them from winning game 1. But it's suddenly become a great series to follow. I wasn't sure how competitive it'd be, but shout out to the Pacers, man. They are so fun to watch. All right, we got to break it here because on the other side of the break, Brad Gilmore, one half of the Hall of Fame, which you can hear Tuesday and Wednesday nights, mostly at 7 o'clock. He, alongside Booker T, the 2-time WWE Hall of Famer. Brad Gilmore will join us next when we return here in the bullpen to talk about WWE Money in the Bank, which takes place tonight on Peacock at 7 o'clock. Be back in a couple minutes. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Bullpen on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Live from the Veritex Community Bank Studios. Here are the producers of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
Welcome back into the Bullpen, ESPN Radio 97.5, 92.5. This is Brian McDonald alongside Cam Smith and Johnny Belmer. I don't know if we'll hear their voice much in this segment because they're not much fan of the wrestling, but the one man that is the man joining me right now. He is one half of the Hall of Fame. You heard a song there coming into the segment that you would hear in segment 2 each night when you can hear the Hall of Fame on these airwaves. Brad Gilmore, along with two-time WWE Hall of Famer, every Tuesday and Wednesday night on these very airwaves with the Hall of Fame. And today, starting at 4 o'clock, you can also hear the Hall of Fame on ESPN Radio National. Brad Gilmore and Booker T and their other co-hosts will be breaking down the full fight card and getting you ready for UFC 316 with the name. We had a whole bit queued up there. Damn. Because I didn't want to try to say the name, Brad, so Johnny was going to play the name for me, but apparently we're having some technical difficulties. Excited to hear you guys break down this card for UFC 316 with the show coming up at 4 o'clock. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks, B-Mac. Yeah, man, UFC 316. I want to have like a little sound drop for that one, too, that says, give me a hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's 316, man, and like, that only comes around once ever for the UFC, and you have Sugar Sean out there with Davishwali.
There we go. There's
we
the
all
name.
like to say his name just like that. You have to say it with extra emphasis.
Yeah.
Because it requires that, because there's so many syllables in it.
There's
we're
so many ways to mess that up. Yeah. There's so many ways to mess that up. And also big card coming up for you guys with Reality of Wrestling. You got the NXT Tag Champs defending the belts a week from today, Saturday, June 14th at Walker Texas Lawyer Arena in Texas City. So definitely a card worth going out to Texas City to watch. Before we get into Money in the Bank, talk about that match and the big card you guys have coming up with Power Shift a week from today.
Yeah, Reality Wrestling Platinum presents Power Shift, big main event of Zilla Fatu. He's taking kind of the internet ablaze, and Ryan Davidson for the Reality Wrestling Championship. And as you mentioned, first time in history, especially to my knowledge, that the NXT Tag Team Championships are being defended anywhere but a WWE show. And that is going to be at Reality of Wrestling when the Command, Terrell Tempo, and Big Luther take on Hank and Tank. And man, I'm going to tell you what, like, I've been a wrestling fan since 1998. And the fact that I'm going to be sitting ringside and on the call for a WWE sanctioned championship match is actually really awesome. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, obviously you guys are going to have access with Booker T's name, on the card, but being the I believe the first promotion to be a part of the WWE ID program has to have been huge for you guys as far as getting to work with some of those WWE talents coming through the Walker Texas Lawyer Arena there in Texas City.
Oh man, when we got the call that they were doing the ID program, and yeah, they wanted to make us the first school with the official designation. It was kind of the culmination of a lot of hard work. Your Reality of Wrestling has been around, officially since 2012, but the school goes back to 2005 under a different name and promotion. But we really worked so hard to have great production, a great facility, great training, and not just look at it from the inside the ring aspect of wrestling, but the outside the ring, the promos, the characters, the entrances. And for WWE to recognize that, and I have to give a huge shout out to Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, who's been so supportive of Reality of Wrestling, as has Paul Triple H Levesque. They've been great to us, and it's just really crazy that Reality of Wrestling is it's the predominant, wrestling company at our level.
Yeah, certainly so. I mean, you could definitely make that argument. I would not argue against that. Brad Gilmore joining me, one half of the Hall of Fame. You can hear Tuesdays and Wednesdays here on the ESPN 97.5 and the voice of Reality of Wrestling. We'll get into his book on Back to the Future here in a little bit. But let's get into this card for Money in the Bank tonight, Brad. Let's start with the men's Money in the Bank match. I think this, and you can kind of make this case, I think, most years when you see the 6 or sometimes 7 names involved in the match where, like, well, there's maybe 2 or 3 names that can actually win this. And for my money, that's probably Seth Rollins or LA Knight, kind of end of list. I think it's a little too soon for Penta. I don't see that Andrade story's there. I mean, I love the El Grande Americano storyline, but I don't see him as being a Money in the Bank winner. The kind of wild card to me is Solo, especially if they want to further this fracture between him and Jacob Fatu, the U.S. champion. But how do you see this match playing out?
I think that you kind of nailed it there at the very beginning. It comes down to really two names for me when I look at the field and what we have here. Seth Rollins, since the turn at WrestleMania and kind of the alignment of this new faction with Paul Heyman, it kind of would give that story even a little bit something extra. He's been a Money in the Bank winner before, obviously, probably with the greatest cash in of all time at WrestleMania 31 all those years ago. So it could really give a little extra umph to that. But the person I would put it on, and the one I kind of think, I hate to use this word, but needs it in a little bit of a way, is LA Knight. LA Knight has been a consistent crowd favorite for the last 2 to 3 years. He had the United States Championship match, which won the championship, and then he had the great match with Jacob Fatu at WrestleMania. And since that, it just feels like he needs that next step to get to the next level and to really be in that main event world title picture. And there's no better way to really put somebody like that in the fans' eyes and really everyone's eyes than to be the Money in the Bank holder, because that guy could be the world champion at any given moment. So if it were me booking the show, I would go LA Knight. That's who I'd want to see go out there and do it. But if he or Seth Rollins wins, I won't be surprised at all. Solo Sikoa is an interesting one just because they gave him such a rocket strap push, to the main event scene, SummerSlam. He took over the bloodline when Roman went down. And I just really feel like Jacob Fatu has kind of taken over that position. And I just kind of feel like it'd be forcing it to put it on Solo Sikoa, honestly.
Yeah, no, I do too. I hope it's the moment for LA Knight, because I kind of view Seth Rollins winning it the way you sometimes hear about guys who get the actual belt, where like they don't need it, right? Like they're over to such a degree, even without the title, that it'd be better used giving it to someone who they could elevate with. And LA Knight, I think this was November 23, maybe it was November 22. He had that title match against Roman, I believe in Saudi Arabia, and you thought, okay, he's right there about to turn the corner to superstardom. And they just kind of, I mean, he did have the U.S. title run, but it feels like they've just kind of messed around and not really capitalized on the huge momentum that he had from his call-up.
I think that he was kind of a victim of bad timing overall, just because the main event scene was so heavy during these last 2 years, especially with the reign of Roman, the rise of Cody. You had the CM Punk and Drew storylines going on, and it just didn't seem like there was a place for him in either world because they were so tied up, really heavy with all the main event stories. It was just kind of him buying his time. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to view it, he's come on to this career renaissance late in his career. He's really caught on at what most people would normally consider toward your tail end of your run. So to me, if you want to get a world title run out of an LA Knight, you pull the trigger now. And look, if the stories are going kind of like they're trending, I know this is going to make you and the rest of the audience just kind of feel like nails on the chalkboard. Logan Paul is heading to the direction of being the next world heavyweight champion. It's going to happen. He's going to beat Jey Uso. He's going to be the next world heavyweight champion. And he being Logan Paul and LA Knight have a great history with each other, and actually had some really great matches going back to SummerSlam last year for that United States Championship. So it would kind of make sense to head in that direction if you eventually want the title on LA Knight.
I like that booking. I look, there will be obviously a vocal presence online that would cringe and push back on the idea of Logan Paul being the world champion. But look, to me, everything that should be booked around heat, and what guy on the roster gets more consistent heat than Logan Paul? So I'd be all for that. And like, if booking ahead, if you had a situation where, let's say Logan Paul is the challenger for Jey Uso at SummerSlam, he takes the title, and then eventually LA Knight a few months later, or maybe even into next year, cashes in on him as the Money in the Bank winner, I'd be totally for that. Let's move over to the women's side, because I do want to ask you questions about Stephanie Vakir and Roxanne Perez because of their ties with Booker T. But this kind of looks like with Rhea Ripley, Stephanie Vakir, Alexa Bliss, Roxanne Perez, Naomi, and Julia as your 6 women in the Money in the Bank match. It kind of feels like Rhea Ripley end of sentence. Do you see anyone else having, like, if you were going to go place a bet on this somewhere, like, is there anyone else worth betting on, or is it Rhea Ripley's briefcase to win?
This one more so than maybe any Money in the Bank ladder match in recent memory is a pick 'em, in my opinion. Rhea Ripley, could she be the Money in the Bank holder? Yeah, but I would kind of look at her similar to Seth Rollins. Like, does she need to be the Money in the Bank holder? Rhea Ripley's kind of always in the conversation for the championship. So if you want to elevate somebody, you just called up in the last 4 weeks, 4 or 5 big talent from the NXT Women's Division, but 3 former NXT Women's Champions in Roxanne Perez, Julia, and Stephanie Vaquer. It seems as though the momentum is on the side of a Stephanie Vaquer and a Roxanne Perez. I think Julia's a sleeper pick. If you're asking me to place a bet, it's really hard for me, B-Mac, but just for the sake of maybe shocking the world, I'm going to go with Julia as it, because Stephanie Vaquer is already boom in that main event scene. Cameras and lights and action is all on her. Roxanne Perez has some stories going on with the Judgment Day and Rhea Ripley, which kind of leaves Julia as an odd woman out, even though her and Zelina Vega look like they might be heading towards a U.S. championship match. So again, as I say, it's a pick 'em. I just threw Julia out there. When you said for me to come on earlier, I thought I was going to pick Stephanie Vaquer. That just shows you how big of a pick 'em this is.
Yeah, I got to ask you, like, is with Stephanie Vaquer not in NXT, is Booker okay? Like, I know that was a big part of his week every week. That seeing Stephanie Vaquer hit the devil's kiss on people. How's he doing with not being able to call that action every week?
I think he took it hard. I think he's still in the stage of acceptance.
Sure.
But he's bequeathed the call to Pat McAfee, and we'll see if McAfee can do it justice. I know he's starting off trying to do that call of the devil's kiss well, but yeah, you know what though, Stephanie Vaquer, her coming through NXT was great, and I think it elevated her, but she was main roster ready from day one. This is where she always needed to be. When you talk about, there's one word that you can't teach. You cannot teach presence. And she has a presence about her. Every time she walks into any arena, you could know nothing about her, and you go, oh, she's about to do something.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but she's about to do something. And she's always had that. And I'm so excited to see what she actually does on the main roster.
Not to end on a bummer here, but I'd be remiss not to ask you about, I think, the biggest news coming out of WWE in the last couple of weeks, the release of R-Truth. I heard you guys talking about on the Hall of Fame a couple days ago. I think the wrestling world was pretty shocked by this. Maybe this is just a sign of the times now that TKO is taking over WWE, and it's just, frankly, like a line item in the budget. They decided that was the move they had to make. But your reaction to the release of R-Truth by WWE?
Yeah, I was obviously disappointed by it because he's been such a consistent force and presence on the show and always done well in everything that he's been given and always entertaining and a super crowd favorite. I do think that when you talk about the TKO and looking at the budget and becoming a line item, I do think that's the era that we're in. And R-Truth's been there since 2008. Really his run started back in 99, except for that brief stint in TNA. So when he came back through 2008 through 25, you're looking at an 18-year career somewhere around there, right? So this is a guy who was probably making pretty good money. And he's in his early 50s, and I think he was probably a line item. And they're like, oh, where can we cut some of the talent budget? And maybe his contract was just too expensive to renew. I don't really know the reason why. To me, that's a guy who you work with and say, can we restructure your deal? Can we keep you around? You're a great ambassador. You're a great presence on the show. I do think he's going to end up back in WWE in some way. I don't know how soon that's going to be, but I was shocked. I was shocked by it in a business where I'm not shocked really at all ever. That one was a shocker.
Yeah, certainly so. I wish we had more time because I got more questions for you. But we're talking to Brad Gilmore, co-host along Booker T with the Hall of Fame. You can hear every Tuesday and Wednesday night here on ESPN 97.5. And you can hear Brad and Booker T today at 4 p.m. on ESPN 97.5 as they break down the UFC 316 card. You can also hear Brad on the call for Reality Wrestling. Again, they have a big show coming up a week from today. Power Shift with the NXT Tag Team titles being defended. They're the Walker, Texas arena, the Walker, Texas Lawyer Arena in Texas City. But Brad, before you go, You've got a book out on Back to the Future entitled "Why We Love Back to the Future: 40 Years of Fandom, Flux Capacitors, and Timeless Adventures." Tell the listeners where they can get that copy and what that book's all about.
Man, the book is about kind of my love and the collective love of what I consider the greatest cinematic trilogy of all time, the Back to the Future trilogy. These are movies that I love beyond belief, and I've spent countless hours and days and feels like decades having conversations about them. So I decided to compile the making of the original trilogy, the animated series, the ride, the video game, the musical, theories that I have about the films, and there's also contributions from a lot of people from the world of Back to the Future because I've gotten to interview so many of them. Mikey Day from Saturday Night Live writes the foreword to the book. Harry Waters Jr., who played Marvin Berry in the film, writes an introduction. Really, if you love the movies or you want to know more about them, you can find it on Amazon or wherever books are sold.
All right, that is Brad Gilmore. Hear him today along with Booker T at 4 o'clock previewing UFC 316. And make sure you listen to the Hall of Fame every Tuesday and Wednesday, mostly at 7 o'clock right here on these very same airwaves. Thank you for joining us, Brad. Have a good show today.
Thanks, B-Mac. Money in the Bank, baby.
I know, man. I can't wait. We'll talk to you again probably around SummerSlam whenever I convince these other two to let me talk wrestling. Have a great day, man.
Have a good one, man.
All right, that's the voice. I turned my own microphone off there. That was an interesting moment. Again, that was the voice of Brad Gilmore. Check him out today at 4 o'clock along with Booker T as they preview UFC card 316. All right, we went a little bit over there, so we've got to make up some time on the other side of the break. The Bullpen will be back in just a couple of minutes. Welcome in, Houston, to the best part of your weekend. Welcome into Mount Rushmore Plus One, the groundbreaking, award-winning segment that has forever changed the landscape of sports radio. And we'll land the three of us, along with Sean Mapes, in the Texas Radio Hall of Fame one day, in far less than the 27 years it took those bums in the morning.
Slackers.
I have upped my insults in this bit. I love you guys, John Lance. Anyway, you're the reason I got into sports radio. All right. This is Mount Rushmore Plus One. Again, big thanks to Brad Gilmore for joining us in the last segment. Listen to he and Booker T at 4 o'clock today as they preview UFC 316. All right. I will go ahead and go first because it ties into the last conversation. This is Money in the Bank, to me, features one of the best gimmick matches the WWE has, the ladder match for the contract that guarantees you a title match. But they've had a lot of dud gimmick matches like, what in the hell were they thinking when they booked this? This is a list of those. The worst, most ridiculous gimmick matches that I've seen as a wrestling fan. Starting off, number one, and this is a split because it's kind of the same thing, and this is mostly a WCW thing, but they used to put things on a pole, or in one case, they put something on a forklift, and in order to win the match, you had to get that object, or in one case, a person down. They put Viagra on a pole at one point. They put a wrestler's mom lifted up on a forklift. And to win the match, you had to get said object or person down. There's a reason why WCW is no longer in business. They went out of business in 2001. But putting things on a pole or Judy Bagwell's mom on a forklift, not great.
I will say this. I did used to watch wrestling when I was younger, and I remember a match where it was a cage match, but there was an item on top of the cage.
Yeah, was it on a pole?
I don't remember.
That was the WCW staple. They put things on a pole all the time. The worst one was when they put Viagra on a pole.
It might have been a pole, but there was definitely a cage involved, and they had to climb up the cage and then climb something else. And I was just kind of like, where are we going with this?
They really lost their way at a certain point. Next one on my Mount Rushmore Plus One of most ridiculous gimmick matches, and I actually kind of enjoy these, but it's just because of the name, and they can't pull off the promise that gets me. The Buried Alive match, a staple for Undertaker's long storied Hall of Fame career. But in the very first one, they buried Undertaker alive, quote unquote, and then he stuck his hand through the grass behind the grave to show that he was still alive. And they went on to have, I don't remember exactly how many, but 5, 6, 7, maybe even more Buried Alive matches. Spoiler alert, no one died.
Clearly.
So it kind of loses the luster when you can't fulfill the promise of the match. I'll speed through the rest of these. Next one, this has only happened once. A Gulf of Mexico match between CM Punk and Chavo Guerrero, where to win the match, you, as the name would suggest, had to throw your opponent into the Gulf of Mexico. That was how you won the match.
Wow.
CM Punk hit the GTS, the go to sleep, and Chavo Guerrero fell into the water, making CM Punk the winner of the one and only Gulf of Mexico match.
Sounds like
I give you some homework if you want to go get stoned and watch something ridiculous. Watch the Gulf of Mexico match from CM Punk and Chavo Guerrero. Next one on my list, most ridiculous gimmick matches in wrestling history, the Dog Kennel match. This happened between Al Snow and Big Boss Man back in the day, where you had the typical steel cage match, which was right up, or the typical steel cage, which was right up on the ring. And then you also had the Hell in a Cell, which was wider. You had both of those in play at the same time. And the gimmick was, in that space in between the typical steel cage and the Hell in a Cell, they were supposed to have like killer attack dogs, like as a deterrent from keeping the wrestlers from trying to escape. Only problem is, because they were worried about the safety of the wrestlers, they had dogs that just sat around, like peed on the floor, started humping each other.
Oh, nice.
And it was nothing, like the scary aspect of killer dogs prowling around the outside was completely shattered right away.
Kennel from Hell.
Kennel from Hell. Yeah, Big Boss Man versus Al Snow back in the day. That was not a winner. And then last but not least, one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen involved the late great British Bulldog. He was once involved in a match where to win it, you had to smother or in other ways get your opponent covered in dog poo. Yes, WWE back in the day had a dog poo match with British Bulldog getting some dog poo spread upon his body.
Real dog poop?
I mean, I don't know if they gimmicked. I don't know if this is working poop or shoot poop as in wrestling parlance. I don't know which one
That's
this was.
crazy.
But they've had a fascination, like Roman Reigns before this current run where he was elevated to the top of the card. Once got handcuffed to the ropes and had dog food poured all over him, I believe by Baron Corbin. So it's for some reason WWE has a fascination with doing wrestling matches involving dog food, and unfortunately, in one case, the British Bulldog dog poo.
It's like they tried to implement a factor from Fear Factor.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Cam, finish this off here. What is your Mount Rushmore +1, sir?
Mine comes from watching recent videos on TikTok and Instagram of people who, because they have a kitchen and cook food, think they know what they're talking about.
So this offends you as someone who is a semi-pro chef.
Yes, semi-pro chef.
I mean, you ran a cooking business. To me, that makes you.
This is true. This is true. So mine is kitchen triggers.
Oh. Okay.
Yes. The first one, putting frozen food straight into the pan.
Yes. And you got to thaw it first.
I see people doing with shrimp all the time, and I'm like, that's disgusting. That is why that shrimp is going to taste.
It's going to get waterlogged. It's going to get rubbery.
And do you know how easy it is to just defrost shrimp? It takes like 3 minutes.
Yeah,
like
shrimp.
Just take that extra time. Using scissors to cut meat.
Guilty. I've done that.
See,
I've done that with chicken. I've never done it with steak or beef. I think I've only done it with chicken. Like if I got I don't usually want to cook the whole chicken breast, or at least not cook it as whole, because chicken breast can be kind of dry.
Yeah.
So I'll sometimes cut that up into more kind of bite size or strips. But I am guilty of that one.
And I'm not going to say that I haven't used scissors before, but it's just like
so easy.
When you're using scissors to and it's the way they describe it. They're like, oh, I'm gonna use these scissors to make clean, even cuts. It's like, no, that's what the knife is for. The scissors, you're gonna get all sorts of different sizes and stuff, and it's just like, just use a knife. I see a set of knives right there. Just use the knives, especially in a cooking video.
Sure.
Like what you do in private, whatever. But if you're like promoting this,
I see
that's not what you should be doing. This one right here, when people use garlic, but it comes from a jar, and they're like, and now we're gonna use fresh garlic.
Oh,
first
instead
off,
of actually like smashing it. And,
that is jarlic, and garlic in a jar is by no means anywhere close to fresh garlic.
Any food like that comes out of a can or
is
a jar
not
is
fresh.
going to take on some flavor of the can or the jar, and it's not going to be one fresh, yes, but also it's going to take on a little bit of a different flavor.
Yeah, just it's clearly not fresh. It's in a jar. Like,
come on. That's definitely misleading. For sure.
This is a little petty, and maybe it's just more funny. But when people are like, when they're like, all right, now we're going to use heavy seasoning, and it's just a couple sprinkles of salt and pepper.
Oh yeah,
that's not heavy seasoning, and honestly, that's really not even like seasoning. Like I don't
know, especially if you're cooking a steak or something, like you basically need to see almost all white with the amount of salt.
And with steak, sure, you don't need to add anything besides salt and pepper, but a couple sprinkles, that's not using heavy seasoning.
No, that's
and
not
then when
seasoned
people are
nearly
like
enough.
To taste, I'm like, what does that mean? Because if you're cooking this video and the whole point is to like get people to do it, they need to know measurements. So just being like, ooh, salt and pepper to taste, like, no, give people an amount. Like,
but there's something to taste, right? Because what is too salty to me might not be too salty to you. So salt to taste just means like to whatever your tolerance is, right?
But again, this more just kind of falls back to like, if you're making a video and like you're wanting your viewers to follow you step by step, you need to give them
the actual something they can follow. Yeah, that makes sense.
The next one, seasoning your raw meat in the kitchen sink.
People do that?
People do that all the time. I've
never seen that before.
People will dump 7-8 chicken breasts in the sink.
Like unprotected.
Unprotected.
Like directly into the sink.
Unprotected. And then their excuse is like, oh, well, I clean the sink. Okay, but that one time you forget to clean the sink after having a bunch of raw chicken in there, and then you go back the next day and you put something in there. I mean, that's why you're throwing up.
And I wouldn't trust the clean of the sink either.
Hell, that's why you have mixing pots and pans.
Yeah.
Like, the sink is to wash dishes.
Or if it's like an entire package, I usually just like open the whole thing up, season over the top of it, put it in,
exactly,
and then season the other side as it's cooking in the pan.
But people were they will get out dish cleaning stuff, clean the sink, and then throw in
the
raw chicken and season it. And I'm just like,
especially with chicken, because like you said, the salmonella thing.
Yeah, it's just wild.
That's
But
all
yeah,
right.
kitchen triggers.
No, most of those, except for the scissors, most of those triggered me as well. Like
Yeah.
I was with you. Like the scissors, I'm okay, guilty.
Guilty.
The other ones I haven't done. All right, that'll conclude Mount Rushmore +1 for this week. When we get back on the other side of the break, final segment for today before the Mean Gene show starts at 2:00. It'll be time for what we love from sports this week and the worst people in sports this week when the Bullpen returns on ESPN Radio 97.5 and 92.5.
This is the Bullpen on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Live from the Veritex Community Bank Studios. Here are the producers of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
Welcome back in ESPN Radio 97.5 and 92.5. Brian McDonald, Cam Smith, John Belmer here with you. We'll be back next week, and we'll wrap up this segment before the Mean Gene show starts next, or at 2:00 here. I almost said next segment. We'll finish up here with the worst people in sports and what we love from sports. My worst person in sports is a local Indiana ABC affiliate in Fort Wayne, Indiana, WPTA to be exact. So Game 1's going on. It's exciting. The Pacers, they're coming back towards the very end. They're down just a couple points. And literally within like the last 2 minutes of the game, it goes from a broadcast of the game and the Pacers come back to and like coverage and a tease to the upcoming newscast in this clip.
Thunder clinging to this 3-point lead. SGA to drive inside. Shot blocked. Siakam throws it back.
Next on 21 Alive News, the man who was brutally beaten at Pike's Pub last week has come forward. Hear what he wants to have happen now. Also tonight, a big night for Pacer fans as Indiana is in the NBA Finals. We'll show you a local business who has seen a boost from the yes
Cut him off, Johnny. Cut him off. Cut him off.
Overnight tonight.
I love that he talks about big night for Pacers fans as they cut off the game. If you haven't seen the video, this is like right about the 110 mark in the fourth quarter. So the Pacers are right, towards the end there of that eventual comeback that ended with the Tyrese Halliburton game winner. But WPTA in Fort Wayne, Indiana, cut it off to promote the news broadcast and in part talk about big night for Pacers fans as they took the game off for Pacers fans trying to watch game one against OKC. Massive fail there from WPTA, the local ABC affiliate. Who's your worst person in sports, Cam?
My worst person, and this is going to have to go back, I believe, 2 weeks, just because I don't think we were able to get to it last week. And this is more of a worst take, and I believe it was Kendrick Perkins when they were having a discussion of like who could be the new face of the league, and he said that Ant Edwards is not going to be the face of the league because he's not a married family man with children. But then the examples he used
Kobe, who once had to give his wife a $4 million ring because he allegedly raped someone in a Colorado hotel room.
And Larry Bird wasn't married with kids until years into his career. So it was just more just like an awful take. Yeah. Like nobody cares if they're married with kids in order to be the face of the league. Yeah. No.
Derek Jeter didn't get married till after he was done. How did he do in his career?
Pretty damn good.
He did pretty damn well. All right. One other quick worst person. I won't go too far in this, but the state of California gets a worst person nominee because they took away a high school student's gold medal in her track and field event because she celebrated too much after she dominated the field in a 100-meter race or something. She apparently had a fire extinguisher and put out her feet because her feet were so blazing from how fast he was running. She does that, and they took away her gold medal. Like, I get you're mad. Maybe there's some sort of penalty. I don't know what it would be, but don't take away the gold medal. Not only because she deserved it, she won, but what do you take it away, give it to second place? What's that going to mean to second place?
I would have given
her. She knows she still lost.
Yeah, I would have given her an extra medal for creativity.
All right, let's quickly go to what we loved in sports this week. We're done with the Angry Sharks. Time to go ahead and swim, doggy paddle, in fact, over to the Sea of Tranquility. I'll mention two quickly as we near our final minute here today. The Rockies, who were on pace to become by far the worst team in baseball history, surpassing last year's White Sox, swept the Marlins earlier this week on the road in Miami. Unbelievable that the Rockies were able to do that. And also, because I'm a Longhorns homer, shout out to the women, the Lady Longhorns, for winning the national title in softball last night. That's why I love the sports, Cam.
It's crazy to think that the Rockies needed 60 games to win 10. My favorite, I'm just going to say the Astros taking over first place and shoving it back into Mariners fans who are always talking.
All right, that'll do it for the Bullpen this week. We'll be back next week. Stay tuned for the Mean Gene Show at 2 o'clock. Have a great weekend, Houston.